Welcome to Building Community, and thank you for joining us. I'm Donna Rodriguez, your host. In this episode, as part of our ongoing discussion about the dimensions of community health and wellness, we're going to examine economic and occupational wellness, the vital role that economic conditions play in family and community health, and the impact that disparities in employment can have on the individual and the larger community. I'm joined by Kevin O'Reilly, Executive Director of the Plymouth Area Chamber of Commerce, and Casey Bischoff, Job Developer for Employment Services for the ARC of Greater Plymouth. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having us. Happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you as well, and it's wonderful to have you both because you're bringing very different perspectives to this conversation for us. So I'm hoping we're able to offer a lot of information for our viewers. I'd like to start off by talking a little bit about what does economic health and wellness mean for a community, because it's not just finances, is it?
No, it's not just finances. It's not just unemployment rates. I think it speaks to the vibrancy of your community, community activities, how much people feel a sense of community in the place in which they live. And I think Plymouth is scoring well on all of those points right now.
Plymouth County really has been performing very well for all of its constituents. Tell me first, why don't we start off with the basics? Let's talk about how is Plymouth doing economically, especially coming out of the recession.
I think everybody experienced the downturn, but I think now that we're out and we've plateaued, you're starting to see some more economic vitality. If you look in our downtowns, if you look at construction starts that are happening now, if you look at the number of new businesses that are applying to come in, not only to Plymouth but into other parts of the county, you're starting to see that uptick again. And I think it bodes well. And I think, you know, if you look at what happened in the recession, I think one thing, maybe a positive that came out of it, is the diversity of the businesses and the jobs that are available out there now as we're starting to build back up again.
And Plymouth always has had a wonderful way of redeveloping itself. You know, we started off as an industrial town. You know, speaking more from economic development through the Chamber and on behalf of businesses, talk a little bit about the path Plymouth has gone on over the years.
Sure. As you know, Plymouth, as those who have lived here for a long time, and even those who haven't, Plymouth was known as a one-industry town for a while with the Cordage Company. Ancestors from Ireland, Italy, Portugal, Germany. You know, everybody came over here and they worked at the Cordage. I know my family moved to Plymouth in the early 70s. I think maybe there were 15 or 16,000 people living in Plymouth then. And now we're up around 60,000 people. So you have to have some diversity in your economy now. When the Cordage shut down, a group of gentlemen were able to purchase the land that this studio and other businesses sit on to form the Plymouth Industrial Park with the PIDC. And they were able to bring in industry into the town. Of course, we had the nuclear plant in the early 70s that came in, which brought our taxes down, and more people moved into Plymouth. But now I think you see that diversity that we've talked about. A lot of medical office now, a lot of health and human services, and tourism. We can't discount how big tourism is in this community now.
It is the #1 industry in Plymouth.
It is, and it creates that ripple effect. So many jobs with our restaurants and so many other aspects of our economy that it's something people don't always pay attention to because it's so spread out and it's so diverse, from the plantation and Pilgrim Hall down to our whale watch boats and our excursion boats. There's a lot going on in Plymouth right now in terms of tourism.
And it's actually, at this point, it's a $3.5 million a year industry, and I don't know that people always realize that it is that large an economic driver in our community.
It is, and with 2020 coming up and the 400th anniversary of Plymouth, it's going to get bigger, and it's going to bring a lot of people into this community, not from across the nation, but also internationally. And I think that's really, not to say that Plymouth isn't on the map already, because you say Plymouth and people associate Plymouth and what happened with the Pilgrims, but I think it's really going to put us on the stage.
I think you're right, and I think the other thing that's very interesting about it is beyond 2020 and how that's going to continue to drive us. And we talk about, you know, the tourism industry bringing in $3.5 million a year. It's also the jobs that it is offering to people in Plymouth as well as throughout Plymouth County. Now, you mentioned Health and Human Services. Health and Human Services is a huge industry in Plymouth. Beth Israel Deaconess is growing and moving forward. They have so much coming into town. But you work for the Arc of Greater Plymouth, and there are literally tens of, almost hundreds of organizations in our county.
Right, and many of them right in this industrial park, which including the Arc. We've moved here, and so we have RTR down the street. You have all the different, I can't remember, community connectors down the street as well, that offer the services to the individuals with disabilities in this community to go out and get jobs in the community to contribute to the tourism and all of the small businesses as well.
And that's another part of what we have to examine when we're talking about economic health and wellness at a community level. In addition to a vibrant industry, that there is a availability not just for a job force, but to be able to grow the job force, to be able to grow their median incomes as well.
Right, that's a very important aspect, and I think that's something that we at the Chamber and other chambers are looking at as well. It's not just the industries that you have and that are in your community, but how do you grow those industries, and how do you attract new industries, and how do you make it easy for all of those kids that are graduating from high school and going off to college to come back to Plymouth. So we make sure that we don't have just an elderly population or an older population here, but we have that younger cohort coming back into town and keeping this this community vibrant. And whether that's through the services that we offer, even the entertainment venues that we have available to them, down to affordable housing. I think that's a big driver as well, making sure that we have enough affordable housing for that younger workforce to come back here and keep our community vibrant.
I absolutely agree with you, and that is another hallmark of seeing, or at least looking at the economic health and wellness of a community, is affordable housing for all. And we have over 70% of our population in the town of Plymouth own their homes. But what is the availability for rentals and for affordable property for people who perhaps aren't homeowners? And there is movement to help to support that. But would you see that as one of our current challenges?
Absolutely. If you talk to people who have done studies as to what is driving folks to young people either to come back when they get out of school, obviously jobs are number one. But if you get that job, where are you going to live? We were joking before, I have 3 children in their 20s, and I welcome them to come back, but I don't want them living with me when they're 30.
You want that exit strategy.
I want that exit strategy. I want that availability for them. And we're not talking about subsidized housing. We're talking about affordable housing. Because I know sometimes people hear affordable housing and they get nervous. Well, what does that mean? It means something that is available for people to come in and put some roots back down and go to work and not have to travel up to Boston every day back and forth, an hour and a half in traffic.
And to be able to grow their families and to be able to give back to the community in which they live.
You know, we think back when we were younger and we bought that starter home, and then we moved on. Someone else bought the starter home, and so on and so on. I think that's one of the things that we could definitely work on, not only in the Plymouth area, but across the whole Commonwealth.
It's very true. And it's funny because today you don't hear people talking about starter homes.
No.
You know, just one half of a generation even later, it's the forever home once you're able to afford it. So it is more challenging for people to be able to purchase homes, and it is more challenging for people to go beyond living paycheck to paycheck. But isn't it true that if the majority of our community is living paycheck to paycheck, that that's actually putting the overall economic health of the community at risk?
It is. We're not a generation of savers. And it's funny, the keynote speaker at the Chamber's recent annual meeting was the new state treasurer, and she devoted quite a bit of her speech to teaching the younger generation how to save and how to plan ahead rather than just trying to live that paycheck to paycheck. And it gets back to, are there enough jobs out there? You know, is the pay scale such that they can put some money aside? And I think we're starting to see that now that we're coming out of the recession.
And we actually, I think tourism was part of the reason that Plymouth County was able to perform a little better through the recession than perhaps the rest of the state. And if you look at how our unemployment rates are, we look much better than the rest of the state as well. So perhaps that part of our industry has supported that. But having state and having local investment in our economy and in the people within our community helps to continue the vibrancy of our economy and protect our community.
Absolutely. We have to continue to look at ways that we're growing the economy, whether it's through tourism, which is such a big driver in Plymouth now, or as we talked about earlier, with the new medical services that we see down here with BIDC in Plymouth. And even looking right around here in the neighborhood, the number of medical offices that have come into what we call the Plymouth Industrial Park, which has morphed more from an industrial park into medical and office and service related, which is all good for our economy because we're not a manufacturing economy anymore. But we have to be innovative in terms of what we're going to be providing for people coming back from college and even those who don't go to college, because college is not for everybody. And we want to make sure there are opportunities for those people as well.
And there have been some pretty interesting initiatives that have been supported from state and local. For instance, the Chamber of Commerce has a very interesting program called Jumpstart.
Correct.
Would you like to talk about that?
Sure. Jumpstart is a great program that is supported by our community partners, such as the AD Makepeace Company and also through some other funds. And what we do is we partner up with some local educational institutes, most recently Massasoit Community College, to put together a veterinary technician program, and also another one with EMTs. And we're able, through our community partners, to help fund college students to get through those programs and have an opportunity to get a job. It takes a commitment from those kids who decide that they don't necessarily want to go off to college and move on into a non-degree or a certificate program. And it's one that we're hoping to expand and let more people know about, because as we said, not everybody needs to go off to college when there are other opportunities out there. We're trying to help develop that and get more opportunities for young people to look at other things other than just college.
And also to be able to help them start off with a higher than minimum wage to be able to support themselves and support their families.
Absolutely. We talked earlier before we came on about how many businesses are now focusing on part-time employees, and where before maybe you took one full-time job, you have to now look at maybe 2 or 3 part-time jobs to make that full-time salary.
And that's something I'd like to talk about when we come back, the difference between unemployment and underemployment. I'd like to thank you so much. This conversation is really wonderful and moving so quickly. And I'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll be right back for more of Building Community.
You didn't know that these people had disability and you saw them working, you would just see workers.
I always say, hey, that's a good job, you know. And they go, yeah, we did it.
What kind of job are you looking for? Because you got to work for the rest of your life.
We were one of the few counties where for so long we made so much money.
Then we came in one day and Ford wasn't here because Ford went bankrupt, I think.
We hit that point, we need to begin implementing a shutdown plan.
Rich people and the ones that are head of the board, they should try trading places with all of us to see how they like it.
I wish we had a miracle, but it don't happen to people like us. It's gonna be fine.
You're watching me bang my head against the wall.
Well, that boat going under, I'm gonna swim.
I don't know, we won't go. Like protest.
Is it easy finding a job out in the community right now? No.
Not everybody has a job.
If you have a disability, do you have a job or are you going to have a career? Is this going to be a career for him? Hopefully he will be in a culture that is more inclusive of him.
I need that real world experience.
We talk, they don't listen.
They sure don't.
They close their ears and they pretend they're deaf. But if they stop and open up their ears and open up their minds and open up their hearts and say, hey, we are people too, but we are working people just like you.
All people have that right to be employed and work.
Welcome back to Building Community. I'm Donna Rodriguez, your host. In this episode, we're talking about economic health and wellness. And when we went to break, we started touching on the idea of unemployment versus underemployment. And if you look at the numbers, for December 2014, Plymouth County has an unemployment rate of 4.9%, which is the lowest it has been in years. But does that really tell us what's happening?
The years of the 20 years and the gold watch are gone. I think people are very transient in terms of jobs these days, and there's not that certainty. When you look at 5% unemployment, there's not that certainty that we had prior to the recession. I think there are some levels of underemployment. There's also some levels of underreporting where people have come off the rolls and are still looking for jobs that aren't reporting anymore. I'm not sure that's a huge percentage, but even 1.5 or 2% is still going to push that up there. And those are the people we're not always hearing about, the ones that I don't want to say have given up, but maybe their benefits have run out or they're not collecting their unemployment and they've sort of fallen off of the books. They're still out there. And those are people that we still need to help address.
And that's where we see some of the disparities, I think, that there are
Correct.
Groups or populations, I hate to use that term, of people who have more challenges in finding employment and might fall off the rolls. Mm-hmm. Now, we hear that folks who are seniors, folks who might not have a certain level of education, or people who have disabilities are all at a much higher risk for under or unemployment. And the most recent numbers I've seen are people with disabilities are 2 times more likely to be underemployed than their friends who are not disabled. Is that what you're finding, Casey?
Absolutely. I have one individual who has 3 jobs, and with that 3 jobs, she can't even reach 20 hours. And on top of that, she has a volunteer position as well, because they want to give back to the community because they're being welcomed and they're being invited into these businesses, so they want to give back. But they're not finding more than those 20 hours or a few hours a day here, a few hours a day there, aren't really equaling out to a job that's extremely fiscally fulfilling.
And they can sustain
exactly
even a modest lifestyle.
Right.
Now, I think there are a couple of different things here with when we're talking about underemployment. Going back to, from coming out of the recession, I understand that Plymouth also having a number of small businesses or medium-sized businesses might not necessarily always be able to afford what comes along with a full-time employee. Benefits, health insurance. Are you finding that through your members at the Chamber?
Yes, quite a few do focus more on either part-time or not bringing back as many full-time as maybe they had previously. And small business is the backbone of our community. We have larger members, but the vast majority of our membership are under 10 employees. And so they're struggling as well. So there's always that balance of you want to make sure that you're taking care of your employees. But I read something recently that said over 50% of the cost for each employee goes to health care and other benefits. And less than 50% is going into salary. And that continues to go up. Healthcare, we have a great healthcare system, but we still haven't been able to get the costs contained. And that's something, we don't want to get into a long discussion about the government's impact on healthcare, but it's something that I know Massachusetts has been trying to deal with. And I think that's something outside of Plymouth that really is going to need to be addressed in the future.
Moving forward. And beyond that, when talking about certain populations, so balancing the health of the business and the employer as well as the financial and economic health of the employee or the people who live in our communities. What are some of the other challenges or misconceptions that you have come across from employers regarding employing people who might have disabilities?
Well, one of the things that you just mentioned, it's important because the 40-hour-a-week jobs that are going away because the employers can't afford the benefits and things, those people that once held those jobs are now holding the part-time jobs that normally our population would be going after. So there's so few of those jobs left over. So we spend a lot of time job carving, looking for things outside the box that they can do. And a lot of the barriers have to do with transportation. Number one, that's one of the things that I've encountered with employers is, how are they going to get there? How are they going to get to work? And that's one of the things that the ARC does. We do transportation, we do job training, job readiness. So there's so many different benefits to hiring different populations of people, specifically ones with disabilities. You're never going to get a more powerful employee in your business.
Dedicated.
Very dedicated. They're going to show up because they love that job. If you put them in a job that they love, they want to be there and they appreciate that job so much that they're going to show up every day. You're not going to have to worry about them calling out sick. And they're going to work harder than any employee you have. So there are so many benefits to hiring these people and to looking for ways to integrate them into the community. That's one of the most important things, I think, is integration.
And I think this is where we start to also cross over into the other half of this another piece of this conversation. In addition to talking about economic health and wellness from a community point of view, occupational health and wellness for an individual, because our jobs give us more than a paycheck.
Absolutely.
Right.
They give us self-worth. They give us self-confidence. They really help to add to how we feel about ourselves as well as how we feel about our ability to be independent and support ourselves and our families.
Right. They make you feel part of the community. If you're giving back to the community, if you're contributing something, you feel like you're part of it. And that's one thing you have to, all these people are people,
Right.
and they have things to give. So it's important to integrate them into our community and into our everyday work lives.
Now, the ARC is I'm sorry, continue.
It's interesting you mentioned the transportation aspect of it because you do studies and you talk to people and you talk to young people and you talk to businesses on the South Shore, and the issues that come up aren't always about salary or wages. It's housing, as we mentioned, and it's transportation. Transportation is still a problem down here.
Right. I mean, we have GATRA, we have Dial-A-Ride. They're wonderful, but they only run during specific hours. So you can only get people to work whether they have, developmental disabilities or a physical disability or seniors to their appointments whenever they...
Between 7 and 5.
Pretty much, and I think it might even be shorter than that.
And when people think of transportation, they think, oh, that commute to Boston or the Red Line's not running, but they don't drill down and think about some of the other issues that you just talked about.
And as such a large community in the biggest town in the state of Plymouth, we don't have sidewalks and we don't have easily accessible ways for people to walk or ride their bicycles to work. Healthy Plymouth is working towards that in really looking and moving forward in our community in a physical sense, but today it does remain a challenge. Now, the ARC has been one of the many health and human services agencies we have in our communities which offer such incredible supports that have really been a leader in being creative in approaching this challenge. Can you talk a little bit about some of the programs that you guys have started to devise for employers and for folks that you're helping to connect to work?
Absolutely. We have, through the United Way, we've been able to offer internships and different internship programs with different companies. So it's been extremely successful. With Mass Maritime, we did an internship program down there for several years now, where they go down, they work in the dining hall, they work in the kitchen, they learn skills, and after 12 weeks, did they get a job or did they not get a job? It's up to the employer and how they worked. Now, the employer got, 4 or 5 people for free. And the individuals got paid. and they got to see, well, I like this about the job or I don't like that. And so they get to decide, I don't want to work here. So they get that training and they get that skill while getting
testing.
paid. Exactly. I mean, a lot of people don't get that, but we've been able to offer that through several different employers. That's just one that's been extremely successful for
And
us.
you've also opened a small business. Would you like to talk about that briefly?
We have a couple, actually. We have a recycling business, which we pick up, and it's a one-stream system. The individuals go out and pick up the recycling from different businesses, take it, sort it, and take it to the facilities to be recycled and keep our environment green. We also have a cleaning business that we go out and we have different people that we've contracted with to clean their businesses, and we just recently purchased a bakery because we were finding that we have so many individuals that want to cook, they want to bake, and it's hard to break into that specific field
Without training.
Without training. So it happened to come on the market in Carver, so we scooped it up and we bought it, and we'll be opening in May. They're going to be able to learn, it's going to be integrated, so they're going to be working with their peers, they're going to be working with the community, and it's going to, I think it'll be a wonderful addition to that little community there.
And you also have a very exciting event coming up, or you're participating in an exciting event. There is a film festival that was started in Manhattan called Real Abilities, and it's been in Boston now for 4 years. And what it entails is bringing a film festival that is everything from shorts to documentaries that are films that are of interest to people with disabilities, perhaps about people with disabilities, of interest to friends and family. And you're participating, the ARC of Greater Plymouth, yes, along with the Plymouth Commission on Disabilities. And you're bringing a film to Plymouth. Would you like to tell us a little bit about the film?
Yes, it's called A Whole Lot More, and it's about Lot Industries out of Toledo, Ohio. They currently employed over 1,200 individuals with developmental or intellectual disabilities, working in their warehouses and their factories with auto parts. And because of the recession being the way that it was, they've took a big hit. So it's all about how they are going to move forward, solve the issues, continue to integrate and hopefully keep people with their jobs.
And it really touches on the impact of, as we said, occupational health and wellness for an individual, and what it feels like to have a job and what that means to love what you do and have it support and sustain you and your family.
Absolutely. And in the film, you'll see these individuals and how having a job has given them that self-worth. It's made them, it's their life. They look forward to going to work every day, just like we do. Mm-hmm. And they have days where they won't want to go to work just like we do. But it would take that job away and you lose a piece of yourself. So I think that it's going to touch on all of those subjects.
And it's going to be screened at the Plymouth Public Library, yes, on March 2nd at 6:30 p.m. Yes. People can get more information by visiting thearcofgp.org online. We're also going to provide information at the end of the show. I think it's important to note that the other piece of what you're doing that evening, in addition to screening this important film, is you are offering an opportunity for a forum. You're bringing in employers who work with people with and without disabilities. You're bringing in people with disabilities who work in our communities to really talk about the importance of offering employment for everyone.
Right, and the employers will be there to talk a little bit about their experiences working with people with disabilities, and a couple of individuals from our program will be there to answer questions and tell them what it's really like trying to get a job out there.
Excellent. I look forward to it. I'd like to thank both of you for joining me today for today's conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank
surprised
you again for
at
having us.
how quickly this has all gone.
Yeah, it flew right by, didn't it?
It did. Well, thank you. And thank you for joining us for this episode of Building Community. For replay times, resources, and more information, visit pactv.org. And if you have show ideas, comments, or questions, email buildingcommunity@pactv.org. Thank you.